Alice, welcome to the call.
And thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, let's start first of all by sharing your challenge that you had before Shackley. What kind of issues were you facing?
Well, this was actually back in the 70s that I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Now, I want to say quickly that we now know that rheumatoid arthritis is just one of the many, many, many inflammatory ailments. So you could take rheumatoid arthritis out and write any other inflammatory ailment in, including heart problems, and it would just be the same thing. So I wanted to say, kind of get that out there quickly, because not everybody has rheumatoid arthritis, but a lot of people have other inflammatory ailments. But it was back in the 70s that it really began to flare up, and I was diagnosed and recommended that I see a rheumatologist in Houston, and I had already determined that I wanted to go another direction. And I don't remember how I was, I remember where the lady lived that had Shackley, but I really don't remember how I was connected with her. But I started on alfalfa, and it seemed to, I think it was helping me. And 3 months after I started on it, in fact, I went to Dallas to hear Dr. Jim Scala and Dr. Bruce Miller speak, and I walked up to Dr. Scala, who was an inflammatory ailment specialist, I guess, although he's PhD. And I showed him my hands, and it was obvious that I had something wrong. They were inflamed and swollen, all the knuckles. And he asked me how many alfalfa I was taking, and I said, I'm taking 10 a day. And he said, take 10 with each meal. And I gulped, and I thought, well, I guess I can do that. And then he said, how many EPA? Now, that is our Mega Guard. How many EPA? And I said, I'm taking 3. And he said, three times a day. So I walked out of there knowing that I had to go, with each meal, I had to do 10 alfalfa and 3 EPA. I did get results. Actually, this was, let me go back just a minute. Earlier in the 70s, all of a sudden we couldn't get alfalfa, and the plant exploded, or I don't know what happened. Trudy, fill in the blanks on that. It was something about the contaminated crop of alfalfa, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know. I've heard stories. That was before I got in Shackley, but I had friends that told me the story that, Shackley is so picky with all of their the crops and stuff because they're grown without pesticides, herbicides, or anything. And there was a period for about 9 months, I am told, before I was part of Shackley, where they could not get alfalfa because we know that Shackley, they do over 350 tests on just the raw ingredients alone. And so when the alfalfa crop came in and Shackley checked it, they found pesticides in the crop, and so they rejected the whole cutting of the alfalfa. And so it's not like, let's just check this batch and check that batch and find a good one. No, they rejected the whole thing, which we're really thankful for the Shackley quality and how picky they are about all that, because we can rest assured that we're getting good products when we get them. But if you were taking alfalfa back then, I heard that a lot of people were in panic because they could not get alfalfa until a new crop could be grown. So that must be the time you're talking about.
Yes, that's the time I'm talking about. So I went to the health food store, and I bought the best alfalfa I could get, but then fast forward to the fact that I was in very, very poor condition. This was when I was introduced to Shackley the second time, and I had my encounter with Dr. Miller and Dr. Scala. So at this point in time, I was an obedient child, and I took my 10 alfalfa 3 times a day, and I still do, and my EPA, my Omega Guard. So it was several months, really, before I really began to see some results, because it takes the body a while to build healthy cells. But in 18 months, literally, I was pain-free for all practical purposes. And in 5 years, the calcium deposits and if you look at my hands right now, you would never know that 27 years or 28 years ago, whenever it was, that they were red, swollen, and just terrible, except for the little pinky on my right finger, and that one, that's just kind of a reminder of what the whole body used to look like. So,
Allison, didn't you tell me something about you were in the condition that you couldn't even dress yourself at one point?
I couldn't dress myself, yes. And I was a single mother, and my son, who was a senior in high school, was leaving for college, and I was saying, Lord, what am I going to do? Who's going to dress me? Well, I didn't need anybody to dress me. I could finally dress myself by the time he left for college. And that was certainly a godsend, an answer to prayer for me, and in many ways.
Well, and I like what you said about giving the body time to repair itself, because, our society is brought up to believe that, let's go take an aspirin and my fever is going to be gone almost immediately. But when you're talking about rebuilding the body, if somebody breaks a finger or something, they automatically think, it's going to take me a few weeks to recover. But for some reason, they don't apply that knowledge to other conditions of the body. And so, yes, if we're consistently feeding ourselves, in your case, you were consistently feeding yourself the good stuff, and it's just a matter for those new cells to grow that were healthier than the previous ones.
And that is so true, and that's something that everybody in Shackley really needs to major on. I mean, because we have people all the time who, they'll take something for 2 weeks or something. Well, I'm not getting any results. Well, I have begun to say, would you please take it for 90 days before we even look at, if there's any improvement or not. But
right.
I just recently had all my blood work done and the cellular work where they look at the cells, and I am better today than I was in 2007. Now recall the fact that 2008 was when Vivix was introduced, and I have been faithful to Vivix, and that's a whole nother story. But but at 80 years old, and actually, I'm closer to 81 than I am 80 now. But I do very well. And it most of the time, when I'm on the phone with somebody calling customer service or something like that, where I have to give my birth date, invariably I'll say 2/24/33, and they will come back and say, well, you don't sound like you're that old. I love it.
Well, and today when I called you to make sure everything was still set for the call tonight, I know you said you were on the road driving back from Dallas, so I mean you're out and about at 1, or almost 81. Well, I know that. Let's fast forward just a little bit, because I'm one of these that got results from alfalfa also, and it's good for so many things because it's anti-inflammatory.
Exactly.
And of course, Vivix is anti-inflammatory too, and so is the Omega Guard, which we call it now Omega Guard instead of the EPA. That's Shackley's mixture of the fish oils and so forth. All of those are inflammatory. They reduce the inflammation in the body. And so I know after you got results that people started wanting to know what you were doing, so you ended up with a Shackley business. You want to share? And I know you've had a very successful Shackley business. That's how I met you. So kind of how did you jump into the business part of Shackley? Because,
well,
we're not restricted by age. So how did you do
no,
that?
absolutely. Well, I was just figuring up. Actually, I guess I was about 53 when all this was happening, and I just had a lot of friends who noticed that the improvement, and then we were having meetings here. My upline at that time was having meetings, and so I was inviting friends to come to the meetings. And I have to say that the number one person and the number two person that I sponsored are still with me.
That is awesome. So they have been with you for the past
27 years. 27 years.
That is awesome. Well, Shackley put statistics out last year saying that according to their records, the average consumer in Shackley has been with Shackley for over 17 years. And so that's pretty awesome. I've been in Shackley myself for 25 years, and I also have people that literally have ordered Shackley for 25 years. So
yes.
I have found this to be the experience. It's very important, just like you said, for people to understand that these products will work if you will just open your mouth and put them in. And
correct.
Also consistently just doing that day after day after day, they will work. And when you have somebody that's starting on the products, I have found that one of the most important things for them to understand is that Shackley is very different from the other things out there. And once they find that out, they're going to be more than likely be lifelong consumers. So, well, Alice, any other words of wisdom you want to share with us before we go into the next part of the call? I know you're going to hang around after the call if anybody has questions.
Well, I was taking a couple of other company supplements that were touted to be natural, and I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker when Shackley came back into my life. So,
right.
I know that to be the truth, that Shackley works, but you have to work with it. So.
Right.
Yeah, I'll hang around and answer any questions. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time to be on the call with us tonight. I want to take just a minute before I introduce Nathan and kind of give you like a quick little less than a minute summary of alfalfa, because alfalfa is one of the products, like I said, that I took for my allergies. And when I found out how Shackley alfalfa is really, really different from all the other alfalfas out there, I was literally it's one of Dr. Shackley's signature products, because he actually introduced Shackley alfalfa back in the 1950s. It's his formulation because he had studied the centuries of use that in all the other cultures, in India, in China, and all these other cultures that had used alfalfa, and he knew the power behind alfalfa. And so he was determined that he was going to have a great alfalfa product with Shackley. And so when I started figuring out, well, why is this different, what I found out is this. Alfalfa roots go as deep as 20 feet into the ground. 20 feet into the ground. That means they pick up trace minerals that no other plant can even reach. Therefore, they're loaded with those trace minerals, and it's one of the most complete foods that you can actually put in your body. In fact, the word itself means the king of all the foods, king of all the plants. And so if you're not taking alfalfa, that might be something you would want to add on to what you're doing. And, of course, the last thing is, why is Shackley alfalfa different? Well, it's different because they use only the fine leaf of the plant itself. It's not ground up stems and roots and all that kind of stuff, which will stress the kidneys over time. No, not all that stuff, but it's just the pure leaf itself that's grown in the best conditions without pesticides, herbicides, or any of those chemicals. And it's just an amazing product. And, of course, we don't have any of the artificial flavors, sweeteners, or any of that added. And so it's just an awesome, awesome product here. So I encourage you to try it. Sometimes during the year when the weather's changing, I have to increase my alfalfa. But it's perfectly fine because it's one of those things where I'm not taking a drug where the doctor says you take one of these or, whatever. I can create according to how I'm feeling. Like before this call, I went and took 3 alfalfas because I thought, my nose is feeling like it might be stopping up a little bit. So after a while, you just kind of learn how to use these products to get the results you need in a natural way without medicine. So I love alfalfa. It's pretty awesome. So we'll jump right on now